What's good, everybody? It's Amon here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Now, this video is going to be a very weird one to go and talk about, as a great deal of y'all probably don't know the two YouTubers I'm talking about, or is this a weird video going to make with the position I am in the sense of being a nobody that even though has had, interactions with them on the most littlest form, and I don't know them on a super big deal, as a fan of one of them to X one of them, Ty with just being a person, that has a platform to speak how he feels about things. I just feel like I'm entitled to go ahead and, speak about it. Now, with this video, for the people who do know, I'm not making this video to talk out of turn or talk like I know better than other people. I'm just here to go ahead and spread my opinion, talk how I feel, talk in depthly about it, and pretty much just be one of the few people that could possibly try to break it down in the most neutral way. Obviously, I'm going to put my 2 cents into it, but I'm going to try to be, obviously, as the most precise. Suffice to say, clean and understanding of what I'm doing. I've took a lot of great time to gather my thoughts, be concise, be congruent with how I feel about things, and most importantly, actually unravel both sides and how the communities on both sides and as a whole feels, you know what I'm saying? But, with this being said, for the people who don't know, Colin and SK are both YouTubers that do reviews, debunks, responses, or things of that sort, mainly about the case of comic book films and things of that sense, or even entirely different media and games, things like that. Now, I'm going to start this video with making it very clear with 3 things. Number 1, again, I'm not trying to be biased. I'm a fan of both of these people in some way. With one of them, I'm not a fan of, being the case of Colin, for reasons I'll get into. Has not stamped entirely to these, allegations or the case of, topic. It's not stamped to this situation entirely, even though the situation does kind of feed into some reasons why I don't necessarily like him too much. But for the record, more of that is going to be explained. This also goes for SK. With anything I think that's wrong about him, I'm going to say the same thing for Colin. I'm going to keep it neutral. If you agree with me, cool. If you disagree with me, fine. If you feel indifferent, whatever the case may be, I would hope that possibly my comment section can be having some respectful discussion. And if Colin or SK or anyone that's cool with him or anyone in the community would see this, know that this comes from a place of just trying to be, as concrete, logical, and neutral as a fan, and not to disrespect anybody in any sense of the way. But as well, the thing I really want to be, clear with this final first point is the fact that whatever I have to say about SK in comparison can be said for Colin, obviously, yes. But again, it's more about the objectivity of it. I have no ill will to these people, no matter what I feel about them as mixed bag people, YouTubers, or the way they go about things. I will give them their flowers. There are other people on the platform doing their thing. So don't, I guess, from my perspective, if I even have a technical community, don't harass them and don't take how I see things as the default. I don't control your mind. I don't control your being. But obviously try to be respectful, because at the end of the day, this situation has nothing to do with me. By the time this video comes out, the situation probably has already, underlapped and kind of just, has smoothly changed and went on. And at the end of the day, to be fair, the situation, the grand scope, is not as big as possibly it need to be. But I just kind of want to set that record straight. Moving forward, though, my second thing is that this video is going to be a lot of just me breaking it down from how I personally see it, but also I'm going to give, proof from Twitter, Discord, tie with the fact of obviously being from both of their individual videos. I've rewatched their videos, I've looked at community posts, I've seen perspectives. So this isn't just going to be me yapping, but obviously it is probably good for you, if you don't know about these people or you do, to go watch their videos and check that out, or even watch other people, if there is any, that could possibly talk about this shit unbiasedly or whatever the case may be. But yeah, third final thing is that when I make this video, again, is for good purpose of education, but I do also make it because of the fact that I did have a great deal of things to say about these people already when it comes to disagreement or whatever. So I do feel like, in a way, as a fan and as a person with his, again, own platform, there's bigger stuff to say. But again, it's not supposed to be in a disrespectful sense. But enough repetition. I'm not trying to be, on a whole yap fest with this intro. Kind of get into it. How I'm going to start this is I'm going to be talking about how I even got to know both of these people. So, obviously, for a lot of people, I got introduced to Colin first, I got introduced to Colin back in 2022 of Guy Will Random Rock, and this Guy Will Random Rock video being his first, mainline video. That's the shit that blew him up. I'm taking it, I thought he was very funny, I thought he was very critical, interesting, and in-depth in his words, and, he seemed like a cool dude, and I liked his mannerisms and how he talked and shit like that, and he seemed like a respectable guy. And for a long time, I felt that. Even if some things I didn't entirely agree with or understand, I still thought he was very cool with how he talked. He was funny. It seemed like a decent coverage, ethics and standards, and, was very good with his editing or, making shit, be funny in his portrayal, right? And so eventually when it came to his iconic, debunk of SK's video on Spider-Man PS4, that's when I met SK. Now, like a lot of people, if you got introduced to SK like I did, you would think SK is just a disagreeable person. I did not see any possible reason to care for his opinion, as it seemed from just the most weird, bogus logic, no offense, and at the same time it just seemed objectively stupid. But regardless, I had nothing to really say about him, I mean, I don't even know what his name means. I don't know nothing about SK on a deeper level besides that. But to be fair, I do think, how SK, did his editing and represented some things was cool. And, I do like the fact that he had Spooderman as his profile picture because, Spooderman is the GOAT. But that's really all I have to say about him. Now, as things further prolong, with me being a viewer of their stuff, being a fan, obviously, regardless of whatever video they made or drama or quote-unquote beef they had, I didn't have much to say. I eventually joined their Discord when I disagreed with them on Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and I was on disagreement day for it, and simply said at least, I wish I could have better unravel and assess my points in preparation, as I didn't exactly expect it to go the way I did, especially because that's the second time I've been in a public, technical debate thing. And as I've gotten, older, tied with, experience in the fact of man just, putting his better critical thinking on board, is the fact that I don't really have anything super open-ended objective to say about Black Panther Wakanda Forever or any movie, depending on the same instance, because at the end of the day, they are movies / forms of entertainment that don't really derive from, I feel like, a thing that you really can stick your whole freaking, foot firmly on a person's neck on some drag shit to really say that, like, you agree or disagree with somebody. I'm not saying you can't, just that's how I personally see it. But obviously, as a person that does, power scan or whatever the case thing, obviously, I can obviously see, why a person would feel entitled or not to speak how they feel. And, if I was better prepared, and since I'm tied with just the fact of me, I just feel like articulating myself better, because I was trying to get into some more stuff, but I feel like how I was, being conversated with kind of diverted from that. But again, besides how I feel about disagreement day and its structure and different things, or Colin and his stance and Black Panther 2 thing, because Colin made the video, SK made the video, but like his ideas or whatever his perspective is on, because they both agree that's not a good film, I personally don't agree. That's how I came to view it. Now, that, was when I technically was put in a public setting of that debate / knew of them in greater form and how they talk and the disagreement days, because I never peeked into disagreement day on a super big deal, and the times that I did was kind of like a whatever thing. So I didn't know that these two, departed from being friends, especially because I don't use Twitter like that, because I don't want brain rot, and I don't really see the purpose for it. And the only social media that I really use in the grand scope is YouTube and, kind of Discord. But even then, I use my brother's account for it, because like that account that maybe some of y'all saw for Disagreement Day, if you know of me, that isn't me. That's technically my brother's, but I obviously was using it for that, and I already, have the connection, with my brother too, go make that be clear. But regardless of that, the actual conflict at hand, to get to that, is the fact that it all started because of the fact that Colin saw a dude on Twitter make a point about the fact that as a Jewish person, when he was playing Marvel Rivals in the game, he saw somebody with the gamer tag of Jewish genocide, right? And he allegedly didn't want to be in a game involved with that person, so he left. Now, this then had Colin go and basically make fun of it, saying that that's the most softest thing ever. And just to go ahead and comment on this, because this was going to happen for the rest of the video, I'm going to make my stance on each thing eventually. right? I'm not gonna comment on it until I fully finish, just to unravel this, right? And he was basically saying that it's soft, calling him pussy because of it, with that just from that, whatever tweet or stance, right? Then, with that being said, when SK saw it, he went about calling out for saying that his stance doesn't make sense. And this is when an argument came into play with SK trying to make it clear that doing that is pretty insensitive or, mean, disrespectful. And then, Colin, because of allegedly being awake for like almost 24 hours, he said, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Said that it's a stupid thing, you know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna make fun of it regardless, right? And he was not actually taking it seriously, slash his, in his own words, quote unquote, impairment was, distorted, aka, not actually being in the best sense of mind to understand it, you know what I'm saying? Right? So with that being said, SK kept pointing out that it's a stupid ass thing to say, felt that like that whole mindset was, to his credit, reasonably stupid and inconsiderate of how that person might feel, and that his stance, which he further made a point on, that leaving a game just because somebody gets on your nerves, or in this sense does something like that, that is probably by some edgy teen or some random bullshit like person, doesn't make it right. Basically saying that a troll name should not get you that mad to leave a game and quote unquote ruin it for others, right? So, with that being said, SK commented slash, replied, basically argued the fact that, that can go both ways and tie with this and pretty much whatever argument. But then it went more bad from SK trying to critique him on his stance, type of comic legend, basically like laughing at the whole mindset of him with Colin this trolling and making it clear that he was trying to rage bait with a image of, what you see on screen. But how he did it is where the conflict really stirs up into a bigger negative bowl. So what he did to basically show it off like he was trolling, but more or less seemed like he was having some type of mental distress, it seemed like from the perspective of SK and the rest of them, was making jokes about suicide, suggesting the most weirdest talk, seemed the most weird rage bait ever, and basically just showcasing to them a guy that does not give a damn at all about what he's saying, how he's saying it, and how it can be taken. So with all that being said, that is the reason, that it was taken to the most ridiculous extent. But with the whole suicide seem like baiting and weird talk, that is what again made them take it to a bigger level, and makes bad reasonably so, as they were actually trying to critique him and he was over here talking about suicide. Now SK's bigger point for why this affected him was the fact that he has went through a situation where he had to go ahead and try to calm his friend down from almost being pressurized to suicide, and he feels like it's just not the right thing to go ahead and joke about. It's weird and just simply put stupid, to say the least. With all that being said, though, as well, is that it simply put was not the right thing to do to him, because he's actually trying to talk and have a serious conversation, and Colin's trying to go ahead and deflect whatever's happening with that. Colin explained that it didn't really matter to him, and that in fact he was just joking, and it doesn't really matter. Not necessarily about his point, but the whole process. This eventually made them, meaning SK, this man, Comic Legend, and other people, think that Colin was thinking about suicide. And then, of course, it being some more bigger shit. And eventually, they got into a call, discussed it, talked about it, and they disapproved bigly of his actions. They thought it was high. They thought, he's actually going through something. SK even made it clear that he's like, this isn't funny. No one messes with this. Everybody's sick of you. It's weird. It's just phony activity or whatever. And Colin reacted in a way that showcased like he didn't care or actually, wanted to hear it. Now, by his own word, he did apologize. He meant to, but they didn't see it the same way because it's about how he did it, and basically saying that when you apologize, you don't basically make it seem like you don't care, or you're trying to basically belittle whatever possible stance that comes from the person. So that is again the main reason why in advance why again he, in comparison SK, said what he said. But that right there was the thing that, you know, broke the camel's back. So that made them no longer be friends. This is the reason why SK cut ties with him, and he said he won't be explaining it / going into detail because of being a private matter unless someone like Colin breaks privacy. This is where we get to the big M'Baku thing that would then force him to bigger play of, you know, breaching privacy. And this is before Colin makes a video actually addressing the situation, as a great deal of people, I can't really give you an exact number, but it seemed like dang near 90% of people that I know or I've seen in the community, YouTube, Discord, Twitter, whatever, did not actually know why these two split. So when it came down to the eventual case of them, you know, addressing it on a bigger surface, it kind of came as a surprise, especially to me. Now, when it came down to breaching privacy, and SK's perception of it was the fact that Colin breached privacy through showcasing DMs and going into deeper detail in ways that would break apart the entire case of, you know, line that he kind of was trying to make in comparison, right? With having personal matters or fighting in this sense between people of disagreeing, you know, perspectives not be public. He went into another Discord that he wasn't in, that he didn't, you know, trust anybody in, he doesn't know them, and he felt like it was wrong. And I think this is after the fact, correct me if I'm wrong, that SK either banned him or wasn't even trying to respond to him. He didn't want to hear what the fuck this man Colin had to say. He didn't like him. He didn't care what he was talking about, right? So, yeah. With that being said, he, by SK's own admission, broke privacy, and Colin's defense for this was the fact that he just wanted to show it, I guess, to go about just showing the reason why, and didn't want to go have it be that, because his explanation or whatever defense wasn't probably shown. And I'll get more into actual like by word type of stuff that he said, but that's just basically what he basically was trying to get at. And his greater defense was that no one cared for it, but then SK reasonably said that that doesn't matter to him. You just shouldn't do it. And to be fair, you know, first time butting in with my stance, I never can see a reason why. It just seemed like an unneeded, like half-ass, like sense of like exposure point, and just new like possible like fueling the fire that already was like volcanically burning, like on some Avatar shit, just to get a new explore of like possible talk. And again, I just will never see really a strong case of reason for why to feel that way. So yeah, that's just like the main thing and reason for why and how that is seen by other people's perspective. That it's just someone trying to make a big deal out of something that doesn't need to be a big deal when it was not a big deal to you the first time, and it being that. Now that wasn't what Colin was trying to do, okay, but to me and a lot of people, and even SK obviously, it just seemed like something unneeded to do. But regardless, to continue onward and kind of finish up this first part is, yeah, that is the reason in advance why they split and why it boiled up into something else. Now, to talk about my personal feelings at first about this, to go ahead and just quickly summarize, the whole stance about him, you know, leaving the game, and you, now obviously being SK, the Jewish player, right, leaving the game because of that. Obviously, if I was in his position and I was like SK, who by all accounts is black, right, and someone put, you know, N-word genocide or monkey genocide or some BS like that. As a person who's been on the internet for a great deal, I don't really care for that, but I don't blame anybody who makes fun of their people or makes fun of an event that can tie to that, because I don't need to be Jewish to understand the effects of genocide or people doing hate crimes or, you know, hateful, ignorant stuff in the name of hating who you come from, your culture, your dignity, your beliefs, your faith, all that shit. I don't need to be that to understand that. Now, do I think it's like kind of needed to leave? Yeah, but again, I'm not him. And I don't think it's actually like inherently pussy. It's because most of the time, I think like when you call somebody a pussy, depending on the case of like how you define that word, it should be a word for more of a true demeaning statement, as I wouldn't call anybody a pussy generally except for that. Now I'm not saying like jokes and other stuff, I'm just saying like if you actually mean that shit in full, then again I don't perceive it in the same sense. There's also just the fact of obviously, you know, me personally, I don't understand really the stance of really having it be a big deal because it's just him. It's a game, and the whole idea that he's having, a meltdown or pissy party thing is not really the case by all accounts. It doesn't even make sense to even be a proclaim, because a few of the things that like he said or other people say are not even like proven stuff about the situation. Like the Jewish player, I think, even reacted to the situation by different account of the community, where he did not leave the ranked game. He didn't even leave the game at all by different account. At the same time, even if possibly he did, again, it's a game, and it was a very small thing and whatever thing. So the fact that possibly that was even like a actual, thing to be addressed or have a problem with was a thing that a lot of people didn't understand. And again, the talk of like him ruining the game for other people is a thing that doesn't really add up, as people can join the game, you can leave the game and go to another, and at the end of the day, that whole statement that, oh, he's quote unquote ruining the game for other people's, ruining other people's experience, you can say the same thing for the guy that's being racist with his gamer tag. And even though it's not entirely relevant, you're not just spending him, obviously, but you're just spending a bunch of other people and even characters in the game. And because it does technically matter, because obviously you take offense to it, and it's a cultural thing. But it's the fact that that argument that because you do something in this game, you ruin the effect for other people's games, you can say the same thing for others. Unless you're doing something that is like so narrow stamped to one thing that is like obliviously stupid and like explicitly stamped entirely by one degree of like fuckery, like you're just doing something to try to downgrade the fun and goodness of something just because something bad happened to you, you're trying to explode into a new boom of just unneededness. To me, I feel like in this scenario, it's just not the right example or comparison, because again, he left a game allegedly, but also there's no actual proof that he in fact did leave. And even if he did, again, it's for, I feel like, an understandable thing. It's a whatever thing. It doesn't really matter. And the Kronos debate, which I'm not going to get too much into because he himself does not, but like his entire logic, stance, and mindset don't really make sense. Obviously, you could let him talk, I guess, here and there, but you reasonably got called out and kind of verbally eviscerated almost because of the fact that you said something reasonably stupid. Like, technically, the technicals of the analogy is two different things, but if you actually have heard the Kronos debate, like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, it's not reasonable, and the whole situation is just goofy. It's goofy, it's unneeded, it's just striking new bars to just, I feel like, unnecessary. And a lot of people think that, but I'm just saying it's like the whole perspective don't make sense, and that reasoning again just don't make sense at all. And the whole him being so tired and not being able to actually understand it, and his scan slash proof of this being impaired judgment has mixed credence, but just being sleepy and not understanding the bigger picture of a situation doesn't rationalize basically baiting and insinuating suicide and acting very childish, I would argue, in a scenario. So from the perspective of SK, I don't really understand it. Now again, I understand the fact that again Colin is just saying that he doesn't like the fact that he did that, and he can have that opinion, and that he's not just trying to belittle trauma. It's just more that was the thing. But his arguments with it involving the case of World War II and the Holocaust by just spamming time there, which is kind of a little bit of my disagreement with him on the perspective of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but we're not going to get into that. It's basically saying because something was so much in the past or at a time that no one is around to actually have any real pain from it, or same time not really matter. And in a way, like, if the stance, because I'm trying to understand it as I'm even saying this, because I don't understand it obviously, it's like, yeah, in a way it is true that technically the situations are so far back and not actually predominant to where you could say it matters to the point of doing this and this action, but his action was so little that it's to the same extent that you would maybe define the problem as. And even then, there are survivors of the Holocaust. It's not that far to change it. And anti-Semitism, racism, terrible things of that sense, and the things that are conflicts for most people to bring up to the past is not the same thing. This also even goes, not even just for like Black Panther Wakanda Forever, this stance, but even this stance on just the racism aspect for like mutants and Marvel or any other aspect of that. Basically that because it's in the past and it's not as bad to talk about it now or something in comparison, it doesn't deprive the substance or the actual validity of being mad about it. And at the end of the day, like, you don't define what is a big deal for somebody else in comparison. Obviously there's objective things that you shouldn't, get like tight over, I guess, but I'm just saying I think the whole argument of his can be flipped on his head. I kind of can understand it from the perspective that yes, it's a terrible thing and it should never happen, but you shouldn't let it go that far. Yeah, but I mean, if I was Jewish and the fact that Jewish people are still getting hated on to this day, it's bad. And again, talking about the characters even in game, because correct me if I'm wrong, there's like 5 to 6 characters in the game that are Jewish. I mean, Magneto, The Thing, Moon Knight, Peter Parker, arguably, and the 5th and 6th, is mixed bag stretches at one different point. Stupid. It's not very smart. And Colin's whole kind of thing with most of that is either that, he just doesn't care, and most of the people don't, and he doesn't take things as seriously as SK. And there's a considerable right with that, but again, SK's own thing was just more being smart with his technical thing. Now, the whole, like, joke stuff, which is going to be a bigger thing, I basically just show examples to kind of, like, just briefly get over that, right, because this video is already long enough, is that, the joke stuff that Colin says or anything of that matter to me, dark humor, fallacious, whatever the case, humor, and just things that just are things you could argue are fucked up and stupid, are not really a problem to me, because me personally, when it comes down to jokes, I stand by with a lot of people that jokes as concepts are always supposed to be meant in some form of fun or humor. Obviously, there can be limits, there can be boundaries, and there can be a threshold to stand by. But usually, with all accounts, jokes are never supposed to be put in a case of bad light or dim sense for taking in a deeper, serious note. Jokes of that type of stance should never be taken to the heart, as opposed to be ways to make lights of whatever fucked up or stupid activity that could be talked about. And again, it's all built off the fact that, simply put, he's saying jokes that some people can see as offensive or just not be appropriate for the scenario. But the watermelon joke with the black guy, or like that whole stance of like him making that watermelon like kind of reference joke in one of his videos, to me isn't bad, because again, it wasn't meant to be a something against black people. Now, I've heard there's been racist allegations or something of that Comic-Con. Again, I've never seen the concrete truth, like the whole N-word thing. I'm going to get to that, but I just want to finish the joke concept in general. Again, to me, like a lot of people, it's that. Obviously, your jokes can have boundaries. You can't just have bad jokes, and you can't just have jokes that arguably don't need to be joked about. To me, I don't have anything to say about it besides the fact that, again, it depends on what it is. But in the words of Patrick CC talking about Andrew Schultz, go right the fuck ahead. Say whatever jokes you want. But don't get mad or don't get surprised if people think the jokes are, 1, not funny, 2, not needed, have no substance in them, and 3, are just goofy, right? There's no punchline to it. I mean, some of these jokes that I've heard him say, I don't personally think it's super funny, but I don't think it's like immoral or just out of pocket. I mean, it's just jokes that me personally are not my type of humor. Like, it's not giving the cringe, or it's blatantly whatever super edge that you can laugh at, and more like just faulty whatever type thing that comes from like iDubbbz or like some cringy comic or something. It's the fact of like, do what you want, no one really cares. It's just the fact of like, if someone sees it in a bad light, they have a reason to feel that way. And to be fair, a lot of how Colin moves with his jokes that I've heard or have been said, it seems like it's just weird, and go ahead and run with that. Me personally, I don't really care, because at the end of the day, it's that. But I understand why some people might feel that way, especially because, one, the jokes, again, they'll have that laughter, and obviously this is all subjective. Jokes are subjective. It's just, again, Colin is not a guy that makes these jokes in ways that most people find funny. Colin is not a comedian. He's not a comedian YouTuber. He's not known for his comedy. He's not known for the same sense of satire. And obviously, you don't have to be any of the things I listed to make these jokes. It's just more how he did it, especially because the jokes that he said about Sydney Sweeney, that's her name, you know what I'm saying, or any other case of possible person, and these type of things. I need to know actual context. I have no concrete proof or context to really substantiate if he's really saying something that's above the line, right? Because again, unlike these other people, which is why there might be a dismantle of his entire logic, is that unlike these people, you would objectively most time never have true reason to get mad at the jokes that they're saying, because in the day they are in a position that is known for spilling jokes, saying weird shit. I mean, if you get mad at Andrew Schultz for his comedy, there's a mixed bag argument that you should not be surprised that he says flagrant jokes. You cannot be mad at Long Beach Griffey because of the substantiation of his jokes. It's a whole different thing. And at the end of the day, they are supposed to be that. If he jokes about this, he's going to say he'll joke about everybody. And it's just that simple. And whatever possibly anyone else he has something to say about, saying some arguable quote-unquote fucked up shit, again, I have nothing to say about comic legend or anyone else. And the argument wouldn't change the point. Again, he can say whatever jokes he wants. I don't stand by this. There's an argument, some people would argue that, like these people, they have actual grounds to say this, because their job is to do this. They make a purpose and point of view off of making it be that. So, yeah, I mean, again, me personally, that's just how I'm always going to see it, because the perspective has been built off of that, right? But again, just to finish my whole thing, that's kind of where the joke then comes from. Now, the whole racism thing, so his second thing about the N-word, listen, as a black man, I personally don't really see anything of greater form, problem or talk to be said about it, because to me, again, I don't know anything super more about it. It's just the fact that when it comes down to the actual merit of the words, I would actually need to understand context, tie with actually getting bigger matter of possible assumption of actual punchline with it. Again, if he's just saying the N-word verbatim and there's nothing of purpose from it, that's when we have a problem for me personally. But I don't know that. Now, obviously, Colin is a white man, a white boy, so culturally, prospectively, mixed states subjective to objective morals, you can argue he cannot say it. And whatever context he's saying it in, I don't know what it is. If you want to talk about N-word past this, jokes this, and how you say it, and people saying slurs, saying whatever this, and how you perceive the N-word this, and there's a bunch of things. Again, I don't know. By his own admission, he says it only in jokes, or he doesn't actually mean it in a weird way. Now, I don't know what he's saying. I don't know if he's saying nigga. I don't know if he's saying nigger. I don't know what he's saying. Nigga could be saying negro for all I know. We don't know. No one has made it clear. In SK's black, so if he has any experience, maybe he could say something. I don't know. But all I have to say, bro, is that I don't know, and I'm going to be honest, I really don't care. Listen, if he's saying something racist, that's one thing. But there's been no concrete truth of that. I don't have much more to say about that. And as a black man, even though not being like a man, like I'm still a young black man, but, I'm technically educated or whatever. Just my perspective on that, as this video is always going to be, I personally don't really give a fuck, because to me, in the words of the late, great Eazy-E, it's how you say it. The N-word has been changed in how a lot of people have used it culturally and all this, to where it's not like a pin of racism or shame or degrading. Don't get me wrong. People can use it like that. And there has been people that wreak that activity. But if you ask me personally, on how I perceive the N-word, I will never see it in the same way that most other people see it, because I feel like a lot of time that's from the perspective of people that use it in ways that are deliberately trying to downform either the trauma, cultural effect or difference. Because there's multiple places around the world where people see the word differently, or places. And where SK lives, coming from New York, there's multiple cultures in that entire city or state that see that word differently too. So all I'm saying is that unless Colin is out here talking like Uncle Ruckus, me personally, go right ahead. As long as you say it in a way that's a different stance and statement and feeling to me, and where I come from / where I live in Columbus, that's not something that's too surprising. Now, there's an argument, because he is white, you arguably shouldn't say it. But like with a bunch of words. It depends on who we're talking about, who says it, who doesn't. And to me, the N-word is very inconsistent on who's allowed to use it and who's not. But I think it's understandable why some people might feel that he's not allowed to say it. But I never heard him say it. I've never heard him say it. I don't think he's ever going to say it. It also goes with the F word or other words used that could be used for degrading stuff. Even though there's obviously an argument here that all these words have different contexts, and you know, we can play the mental gymnastics, just simply put there's some words you shouldn't say, regardless of how you say it or what you're trying to say, so because how it's used. And you can say that for the N word, you can say it for the F word. I think it's even more very strong for the F word, because no matter what the word is used for, it's used iconically for this and this and this. So just don't say it. That's all I can say, I guess. If you wanted to get like a fine line, it's like a grading thing. Just don't say it. You know, just don't say it. You don't have a reason to say it. And yeah, just don't say it, I guess. But I mean, if he wants to, go ahead. I ain't going to get offended by it. It's just there's an argument. Just don't say it, I guess. That's all I have to say, man. Fine. But, you know, referencing Jack Kidner, who makes baseless claims with no proof, no strongness, and the fact that, to me, talking about he getting shit from Reddit or the oil shit doesn't make any difference at all. It's because, first of all, that's his problem. Like, obviously, yeah, technically, you shouldn't give him money, I guess, by the fact that he's going to use it stupidly. Especially the whole, like, him going 100 miles per hour thing or whatever the case. That can get people killed. And he didn't really, I feel like, thoroughly explain what that situation was. And obviously, going 100 is still illegal, regardless if you're not actually about to kill somebody or whatever the case. It's just not a good thing to say, regardless how fast your car, what it is. But he's a grown-ass man. If you want to do that, he can do that. Now, it's reasonable not to go and support him. Me, personally, I don't really feel like there's a reason to. Because at the end of the day, it's your problem, it's your means, and you kind of set yourself up for it. And arguably, you did not need to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is in the grand scope. But saying that he did things that he didn't, especially because Jack Kidner just seems to say this shit. He doesn't like him, but, you know, whatever reasonable form. Even though, again, me personally, I can't take him seriously. Me personally, right? It is what it is. Like, the car thing, I don't really care. The whole job thing is kind of funny, and he possibly should if you really want to get that car together and help his family or whatever, because the statements about him not caring about his family and all this other shit, I don't think that's really true. I feel like that's kind of stretching the bar for, like, pettiness. I ain't gonna lie. I can't understand that. But, again, that's just that. It's just whatever flimsiness, to say the least. But to continue onwards, like, the talks of that have mixed bag, you know, multiple reasonable sense of, like, credence and perspective. And don't get me wrong, Colin definitely seems to be a guy that does in some way not care enough about some things that he should care more about. But I don't necessarily think it's reasonable to say he doesn't care about his family. He doesn't care technically about his fans. It seems like he does have somewhat of like a soul, at least, to say some of the things that he says. And me personally, I just don't see it in the same perspective as SK or some of the other people, where he's just like a fucking negative twat with no soul in mind or something. Like, I think that's a little bit of a stretch to keep it a buck, but I don't know. That's just me, though, with how I see that as a whole. But it's definitely reasonable to call him out in comparison with that, I guess, and all of Colin's things about just, you know, having a job, having perspective to do this, the fact that he tries to go and help his mother. You know, I feel bad for the fact that him and his mom got the tires, you know, scratch/punted or whatever the fuck, and all that. So it's just a bunch of shit that doesn't really matter, and, you know, I feel bad for that, and he has a reasonable reason to feel some type of way. Now, where it really clocks into the big, you know, deep dive of bullshit is when Colin had his ex-friend, the witness, who has all these different allegations and claims about him that I don't even know. I don't know what he's a felon for. I don't know what it is. I haven't even got a much thorough investigation on that shit enough to really say anything. I haven't got enough proof. There's not even enough creative. It's a bunch of talk. It's nothing of actual substance, to say the least, that could give me a thorough understanding of that perspective, right? But simply put, he made an allegation talking about Colin being a cat murderer or something of that fuck shit. And then it went more spiraling out. SK said in his own words and showed that he wanted to understand more because it just seemed like a very wild statement in case a thing. And in Colin's own perspective, as soon as that got put out, he immediately, in the exact words, debunked it. And by all accounts on Twitter, to provide proof, he did that. But the problem came with the fact that SK showed it out there questioned it and showed all those different things. And he gave him the opportunity, even if he didn't like him, to try to go ahead and disprove it. And Colin said that he wouldn't even do that until something else happened, where he basically gave him the ultimate proof check. He had to jigsaw his way to prove it, and by all accounts, what SK showed, that was not the case, and he did give a good sense of understanding to it and allowed him to prove it. And he gave different scans, showings, docs showing that his cat is okay or whatever the fuck, and showing that it just doesn't make sense, and it's just a very bogus statement. It's because it's not filled with any proof or any sense of actual truth. It's just a guy saying something to get at him because he's under a lot of fire and scrutiny, because people don't like Colin for, mixed reasons. That is understandable. I'm not gonna lie. But even then, I'ma just say the fact that, yeah, SK taking it and doing what he did with it in the greater deal, I don't think was the most smartest thing. I think from the perspective that he didn't know, and that he more or less was questioning it, and arguably going with it to the point of questioning it without having 100% proof is a little bit wild. And I don't think it's a very needed thing. Even if you want to argue, his reputation is tied to him and different people talking about them and them having corresponds a bunch of shit going on. I don't really think it's needed to do that. And it did kind of go a little bit far. Granted, again, he did not know. He wanted to get thorough proof. It seemed natural at the time. And he addressed it, apologized, made it clear, took it all down, pushed to go beyond, and make it clear that it's not a good thing to do. But this enraged Colin enough to where he made a tweet basically saying, if you don't take that shit down, don't, address it thoroughly, then I'm going to go ahead and expose your face. And obviously, for people who know SK, he doesn't put out his face, you know what I'm saying? He's just known as basically Spooter Miguel online, right? And so he showed his face. Now, I'm not going to show his face. I don't even have his face, and I'm not going to go that deep to go ahead and show it. I'm just saying that's what he did. That's shown. That's addressed. Now, even though the whole term doxing in the context and perspective of doxing where the motherfucker live, personal information in that regard, is technically, by mixed correctional law, not exactly the same, but it's not wrong that, yes, you do breach his privacy, you do showcase something about him in a personal matter that is not, right to show, and you do put forth something that is not, reasonable to be seen / shown in comparison. So even though, yes, what SK did that he acknowledged was not okay, and same time, was not addressing the full, lengths of shit, it still was, at the end of the day, something that he did not know, and was small to the point that it didn't hold any big weight in the end of actually peaking shit. Because again, this stuff was very, washed up, unneeded, not even coherent, not even ethical things. It just doesn't make sense. Pretty much it's just a guy playing with the whole situation and making it seem like something that's not just for it to be that. There's no actual credence in the logic that he gave at all or anything of that sort. So yeah, that's just kind of what, again, all of it stems from. Just a guy being mad, and SK unfortunately taking his word a little bit too much, and because of his dislike, kind of feeling like it adds up because of everything I said before. Colin went kind of more extra mile by breaching privacy, taking something personal about him, showing it, and then basically doxing him there, and it's just disrespectful. Now, to comment on that, just to leave it open-ended, I do think that is wrong. Regardless of the scenario, you shouldn't do something as bad to arguably worse to the same extent. Him, yes, running with that is not okay, but he didn't run with it on malicious intent. You deliberately went out your way to go about exposing his face, and your only excuse really is that. And he tries to go and say that he's not trying to excuse it in the sense that it's okay, but it's the fact that you don't formally apologize in comparison with it, and at the same time, actually make it clear that it's not okay. So with this being said, with his larger growth, because the whole talk about him losing subscribers doesn't really seem to matter with his height and all that, because he still, got these subscribers worth. I don't know too much about views, but we're not going to get into that. It's just the fact that, it doesn't change anything. The fact that you expose somebody's privacy, you breached, I feel like, a general sense of, social cue or, bar for people is where the all-around bad comes from. You're just not supposed to do that, It's not okay, and it's just not something that should ever be, for debate. Like, it's not okay, and other people, his fans, SK's fans, ACHD, and even other people that spoke on the situation agree that it's just not okay. And he never formally apologized a greater deal. And even like with SK saying that, he could still be mad about what he did with the whole cat situation to this day. But it's the fact that he addressed that he was wrong and clarified a greater deal. Colin doesn't seem to really care or think it's that big of a deal to do that. And his argument about, oh, if, you really want to think about it, that, yeah, okay, just because I showed your face doesn't mean anything. You're a 20K this, you're this and that, and that, I've done the same things, kind of doesn't make a difference. The difference is that you want that to be the case. Your situation is not as serious to him. You can't judge what is serious to him in comparison. You don't get to define that. And it doesn't matter what his length is as a YouTuber. It doesn't matter how much subscribers, how much publicity he has. You just simply are not in a position to make any type of statement about him not being able to take it seriously. I do think, if you just ask me, I don't think his face being out there is that big of a deal. But we're respecting his privacy. It's his right, literally and figuratively, to not want it to be put out. And it's just not needed. And there's a bunch of YouTubers, a bunch of commentary YouTubers who are the main people that are like this, don't show their face for that exact reason. For the reason that they want it to be private, doxing, personal matters. They don't want their face to speak for what it is. They don't want people to get personally attached to them. And, possibly it could be a dream situation. Even though he said that, he's not scared or thinks that how he looks is like terrible or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not ugly or whatever. But it's more, I just don't want my face to be shown. And it don't even got to be like a dream situation or whatever. It's his face, nigga. Like, you can't tell him how he feels to show it. And like, I understand, again, he was mad, but like, there gotta be a limit, objectively, on what you do. And to me, it just wasn't a reasonable thing in the grand scope. It's one thing if it's in the moment and you address it or you take it down. You didn't take it down for a great deal. This man SK did, regardless of how it got to that point. He did do that, and he did apologize, and he did make it clear that it's not okay. And simply put, it's not a very reasonable thing to do regardless of any scenario. So again, that perspective is not very good. It's not very strong. It's just very kind of flimsy. And in the end, I think the whole stance of it really falls back just on the fact that these guys don't like each other. So they'll kind of do more or less on Colin, it seemed like anything to kind of fuck him over or make him be something else. So yeah, it's just not a very funny thing in comparison. And yeah, I mean, in conclusion, that's the best thing that I could kind of like say, I guess, in this, right? Because I mean, I've covered all this kind of in the jumble sense, but kind of trying to break it down in the best ways of my opinion and my addressment of things here, right? To say how I feel in the whole situation, and read one last thing that kind of might give coverage as, I'm just going to read what Colin has had to say on the final matter as, he, responded to the video, has been cooked on his whole car situation. There's been a whole talks, from the Messi's community about the fact that, he's not responding because he's a pussy. I'm just going to read what he has to say and then give my final opinion, kind of just say how I feel all around with the situation, as the situation at this point has kind of been whatever case of talk with the thing, regardless of his comment section, possibly having deleted comments or whatever. It's just simply put not something I feel like that matters to me at this point anymore. But just to read, final thing I'll say in regards to this whole situation, because I'm moving on. One, there's so much in this video that I want to respond to that is just him not understanding a point and making a response out of something he didn't fully understand. And there's multiple times where he either intentionally or unintentionally makes something sound worse than it actually is. For instance, prime example, him saying I was putting people in danger whenever I speed in my car at dangerous speed, even though I only do that when nobody is near me, so there's a 1% risk of something even going wrong. Or when he tries to say that I don't care about my family, which is just unreal, for instance. Doesn't change that it's illegal and that it's kind of stupid, but moving on. But this is the nature of response videos, so I won't blame him completely even when he is being an idiot, other than the points where he's just obviously being disingenuous to the things I'm saying. No, for example, was being said. Like, I'm not trying to mean, technically you could try to gather that, but I could never think of anything besides mixed bag on, like, talks of that creative like pettiness of this or understanding a greater perspective, but it doesn't change the fact that the grand scope, end all be all bad that comes with it. But again, that's just one thing. But pushing on forward, for example, there, a lot of what you thought this drama was mostly stupid to begin with, and I agree. Most of it was moved on from until SK decided to bring it back up again. And the new drama is him lying about my car situation. Is citing a video from Jack Kidner where he also lies and misrepresents my car situation. And it's also SK downplaying and making wild comparisons to him, framing me as a cat murderer when I gave him mountains of proof that he was believing false information that he continued to believe and spread in spite of that for hours when it was so obviously fake. I don't see that as just a quote-unquote little oopsie, end quote, and expecting me to just insane. And with that statement and response at hand, with all that being said, like there's a level of understanding, but it's also just, I feel like, a mix of him not understanding from the perspective of him that it seemed credible. He went on with it. We don't have the behind the scenes stuff, so I don't know exactly on both sides. And again, I do think both of them are wrong. But to me, you would have to give better credence in this and this and this for that. But to be fair, when SK used some parts and or logic, you can say can be diffused of any actual like spark of purpose easily with a few steps. But again, still, 3, if you don't like me, have a good one, and you can leave and not engage with me further. I honestly don't care. Anyone that wants to continue dragging this out is just going to be blocked because I'm moving on from it. If you want to ask me questions sincerely, I'm fine with clarifying some things, but I'm not bothering with any snarky comments. Anything I did wrong that he brought up in his original video, I acknowledge and admitted to, so I don't care if people just bringing up private shit that happened months ago that I already admitted where I was wrong on and try to move off from. Okay. Clear my throat, pause, and would appreciate reading there because a little bit how he was trying to kind of make sense and full cohesion. No offense, not even saying that this man can, type or is like illiterate or whatever. But I'm just saying in the sense of reading that precisely or not, it's the fact that there's a level of understanding, but it's not clarified, it's not very substantiated, and the whole idea that you're going to block people, depending on what you're talking about, removing comments or that, it shows that it kind of makes you look bad and wrong, and it just proves kind of to me that he cannot handle criticism on a greater record. And anyone that disagrees with him or has some type of difference of opinion, objective or not, seems to be sticking in a different level of like, I don't know, retarded or not having any true essence of understanding of what he's getting at in his own right. Which I'm not saying entirely he said, but to me it's shown a little bit in his character how he moves with shit is just being blatantly a one-note, numb-minded sign of like, not necessarily like what some people say narcissistic behavior, but definitely an entirely like self-minded mindset. Like no pun intended. But his final thing is my vids are gonna continue as normal from here on out. Sorry to anyone that just wanted to see that. Sorry to anyone that was upset by anything in the situation. If SK wants to continue this, he can do what he wants, but I'm not. And most of his comments, for the most part, kind of like want to go with it, but in the words of High CHD, he can't support him because the doxing thing is kind of a one-note end-all thing, and I can't really support it. In conclusion, all around, after everything I broke down, looking over everything, for all the scans, for both sides, the proof in the pudding, representation of all the possible talks and insults to be had against Colin and SK, how I see it is, number one, again, it's just not something good, to do. Like I said, with the whole doxing thing and how Colin went about doing it. The people talking about accountability and saying that he's not sorry, you can't really, I feel like, mixed bag constitute, but to me, this man's not flat out apologizing or acknowledging, the doxing in the way that it needs to be appropriately done. And, you can see it as wrong, but not actually clearing your wrong is the difference. And to me, just to say who I think is right, I think all around, both of them are wrong in their own right, but I think Colin obviously has a lot of distinctly indefinite wrongs about him. He doxed his face. He pulled things in comparison that just don't make sense. I think just how this man has moved is just flat out, not needed and considerate. And, the jokes things, again, I need a lot more context for it, but it's definitely reasonable to say that Colin has moved in ways that you could plop just a simple sense of just unneeded fuck nigga ignorance, whatever you want to say, whatever type of case of like stance you want to say about Colin. I guess you could push that. And personally, I don't really see it on the same scuff, but he definitely can be, a staple of just a guy that you like for a very great deal of time. It has a lot of likable qualities and cool things, but has pulled things more or less over time that stretches like the decree for just a buffoon to me. And this is where I just get into like my opinion on both of them on a greater deal. And the reason why I don't support Colin no more is not just from like these things, but to me, I feel like there's a case where Colin can, be in some of his argumentation or how he comes off, disagreement day or not, as rude, unlikable, unneeded. Some of the things that he talks about when it comes down to the case of his, reviews or debunk videos or something and doing this and that, regardless to I agree or not, I feel like some of the logic and or the mindset is not really needed, and or I feel like he's just deliberately ignorant with some things. And then some of the people that he talks about in the matter for debunks, I feel like it's arguably just unneeded and at the same time just blatantly a pain clear this I'm going to talk about these people because they reckon the best possible mileage of, I don't know, like opening up of, I feel like the bubble of either discussion or something else in comparison. Now I'm not trying to say that Colin's a clout chaser or anything. It's just, it seemed like a lot of his videos, it just seemed like the same type of thing and not really having a deeper talk about anything. And it's also just the fact that I don't really agree with him, regardless of his morals or, movies. But, that is what it is. It's just, I can't really, respect him no more. And all around, I just feel like he's kind of inconsistent. That's all that to me. SK, same thing. I think that he's wrong in some ways, but the thing is, again, SK apologizes more or less for it. But, his perception about Colin stuff, him taking the situation that you can say he's in the right end and kind of taking a little bit too far is unneeded. And some mildly just over spray of negativity in this situation. But again, think that it's overall not as deep as it should have been on both sides for these people to do some of the actions that they did. But again, like I said, no repetition. SK all around was better in how he did it and what he went about. So, yeah, I mean, that's just how I feel. I think, I'm going to keep riding with SK. I disagree with SK here and there. I don't agree with every mindset that he has. But, for the most part, he's more of a likable and considerable, credible person, no matter for that shit. But it really doesn't matter. In conclusion, I just hope I did as decently fine to break down a situation from a fan to unfan of one other perspective. If you really want to get the best look of things, go watch individual videos, go watch the drama from their sides, figure it out in your own way, you know what I'm saying, right? And yeah, in any sense that you think that I'm wrong for why I think that I'm saying what I'm saying, that's perfectly fine. Like I said, basically at the start of the video, you know what I'm saying, you agree to disagree with me, you feel indifferent, well, all around, again, any possible excuse or rationale for this perspective of Colin or why he says what he says, again, I can never see having any strongness, but it is what it is. That's going to be it for the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace and love, man. Love y'all.